Welcome to MVP, our new podcast for anyone that loves to learn new things. I'm Kate.
And I'm Jack, and we both work at an online school, MVA.
Like most educators, we are passionate about sharing knowledge.
And love the sound of our own voices.
Each week, we'll invite a special guest to join us for fun and engaging discussions on a wide range of topics, from careers advice to social issues.
So sit back, relax, and let's get into it.
Hello and welcome back to MVP. Good to be back, Jack.
It is. For the listeners, it's not been, it's been normal time. It's been a week. But for us, it's been a while because we recorded so many up front.
Yeah.
You were away. And
I know.
Now we're back doing it again. So it feels fresh. I'm excited.
How are you feeling about today's episode, Jack?
I'm good. We're doing ethics, right? And ethical debates. It's an area that's always sort of interested me, particularly with things like, I don't know if you'll mention it later, but the trolley problem. And,
that's one of the ones. Yeah.
And it always makes me think of self-driving cars because, there's a lot of ethics around that, whether the car has to make the decision to kill a toddler over two old people, and it has to sort of weigh that up and be smart enough to weigh that up and go and see what it does. But yeah, that's sort of an updated, newer trolley problem.
What's your view? What not view, because it's not like an opinion, but like, what's ethics to you? What do you even think of when? Because I should probably, full disclosure, I know a little bit about this area. This was very much what I was interested in, both sort of A levels at school, but also then following on from that, I did my degree in philosophy and ethics. So I'm coming at this from quite a smug, knowledgeable period where I am the master and you are my student for the day. So I apologize in advance for being unbearable. This is what my students had to deal with, me knowing more than them on given topics. It doesn't make for a very pleasant Kate Meeks, unfortunately.
I think that's okay. I don't know that much about ethics, so my knowledge is moral dilemmas and questions that you can't really have a correct answer to. That's my thinking.
A lot of waffling.
Yeah. It's like going around in circles and circles again and again until you reach the point that you're back at the start where no one can decide what the right answer is. That's ethics to me.
Yeah, you've summed it up perfectly. So we'll just end the podcast now.
Yeah,
and that's everything we know about ethics. So ethics is actually the study of moral principles and values that guide our behavior. So when we're making decisions in life, lots of things we do instinctively, lots of things we do because we've always done them. I think lots of things we do because there are rules in place to say that this is what you're supposed to do and this is what you're not supposed to do. But largely speaking, back in the olden days, someone's deciding somewhere what these rules and principles should be and how we should live our lives. And whilst we might have a code of ethics that we as society all kind of adhere to now, actually that code isn't formed, it isn't rigid, and different people interpret things differently. And sort of the benefits of thinking about ethics is, as you grow up as a person, you tend to really start to identify values that you hold dear, rather than just things that you've been told to do. Or when you're young, your values are pretty decided by your parents or by your teachers. But as you grow older, you want to start thinking about, actually, what do I believe about right and wrong? And that's why I think ethics is really interesting. There's a lot of head scratching, no real solution, arguments one way or another. It can be quite frustrating. Any students out there that are studying sort of RS or are probably pretty used to this kind of debate. And it's very similar to the skills that you use in debating, really.
I thought you were going to say it's very similar to our episode on politics. Where we spoke a lot about the same, how you get it from your parents at first, and then you develop your own opinion and your own thoughts. And I suppose politics and your ethical beliefs kind of go hand in hand in one way or another.
Definitely, because politics is about, as well, like governing, and governing is about rules, and those rules are decided upon based off of right and wrong. So actually, there's a few different schools of ethics, and I'm not going to talk about all of them at all because, this is a finite period of time. But one of those schools of thought is following rules, and you agree to certain principles and certain rules, like do not kill. So even if we go back and we think even biblically, something like the 10 Commandments would be rules that you're supposed to live your life by. And when you agree to those rules, you then make your decisions based off of, am I following those rules? And to an extent, in today's society, that's what laws are. Jack, you shouldn't go around killing somebody, largely because you'll get in trouble and you'll go to prison. But that's someone's made that decision that killing is wrong and put a rule in place to stop the average Joe from doing that. So yes, so rules based is called deontological ethics, and essentially there are moral duties, there are rules, and there are principles in place that have something that's called intrinsic value, so rightness and wrongness. And you can look at an action and you can think about the rightness and wrongness just based off of what that action is. So there are certain moral guiding principles that we should all follow. Do not lie, do not steal, do not kill. Those are sort of three off the top of my head. And this very much forms lots of our structures of society, is about having rules. You have rules in place in school about behavior. But then there's other schools of thought as well. So that's deontological ethics.
So then the idea of those ones presumably is to keep everyone safe, or to keep everyone, general, very, very general, broad rules that make for a better society in a very basic way.
Exactly.
That's what it sounds like.
And they're the sort of things where, if you don't want it done to you, don't do it to somebody else. That kind of makes sense. And rightness and wrongness is based on an act. So something like do not kill has no ifs or buts. Now that becomes challenging when you apply this to the ethics of war, or when you apply it to things like abortion, capital punishment, euthanasia. And we'll talk a little bit about dilemmas later, and we'll probably do some more pods where we'll explore things like that in more detail. But if you have a rule that says do not kill, and that is in itself, killing is a wrong, bad act, regardless of outcome, that is following deontological ethics.
Yeah.
But then you kind of had a new age of ethical thinking, which was based on consequences. And actually, the rightness and wrongness of an act isn't based off of a specific thing. There isn't an intrinsic value that killing is wrong. Killing is wrong because the majority of the time it has a bad outcome. And we should make our decisions for our ethics and how we live our lives based off of the outcome of what we do. And I actually think a lot of people probably do this a little bit. Maybe they have the guiding principles of rules in place, like do not lie, but then tell lies if they think actually it's going to be better. It's going to be a better outcome for more people if I've told this lie.
Yeah.
So this is like consequentialism. And it was sort of developed into something called the principle of utility, which is essentially that actions should aim to have the greatest overall happiness or well-being. And you should weigh up harm caused and happiness when you're deciding on your outcome. So when we come to these ethical dilemmas, we'll look at them from rightness and wrongness, as in obeying a rule, or thinking about consequences.
Yeah. So like, I suppose this stealing to feed your family who are going to starve to death would be that sort of weighing it up, and overall it's a good thing to do because you're saving your family's life, or you're helping them to eat, and the person who you're stealing from perhaps didn't need that extra loaf of bread.
Exactly.
Robin Hood, maybe.
Exactly. And you see lots of examples where the expression like the ends justify the means. So doing something bad to help a better outcome, or like the majority outweighing the minority. And the problem with this is if you don't have guiding principles, sometimes that can be really manipulated. So when you see things like torturing a suspect to try and find out about a plot, you're thinking that the ends justify the means, but
Yeah.
actually you can then sometimes really justify terrible behavior when you haven't been able to accurately predict consequence. And predicting consequence is not something that anyone can just do. You really need to think about long-term impacts, and that's very difficult to measure, and really weighing up benefit and harm can be really challenging. So actually just following laws makes a lot of sense for a society. To have a rule of don't steal or have a rule of don't kill, you don't then need to be like, oh, well, I did kill them because I thought they were going to kill, those 5 people, or, it becomes a bit more clear cut.
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
With me so far?
I think I am. Yeah. So we started off with very, very basic rules that, you might have as cavemen. And actually, in my head, we've now developed as humans. We now got more understanding. We can now weigh things up. We can argue things.
We now have
ways.
taxes.
Yes, exactly.
Which out of those two do you reckon you lean towards?
I think definitely the second one, in that I like to take everyone's opinion, everyone's side, and their sort of into account, and come to my own conclusions and weigh things up. And so I completely side with the overall good idea. So if I feel that it's 60% overall good, then that wrong is ethically okay with me.
Do you think you would that way of thinking would lead you to break the law ever?
Yes, because as you were saying, I was thinking sort of self-defense. Although whether or not that is breaking the law, because you're kind of protected by it being self-defense. But if someone was going to kind of kill me in some way, or maybe a less morbid one, if someone was going to steal from me, but I stole their car before they could steal from me, for me that's weighing out that, that's the greater good. Justice has been served in one way or another. To think of other ways, I could definitely see myself, if I was, or my family or someone I cared about was starving, and the only way I could get food would be through stealing. I could definitely see myself doing that for them, which in my mind would be justified.
Yeah. No,
I
tend to agree with you. I think rules are really useful guidelines, but I tend to think about outcomes of what I'm doing. I think lots of us probably do, because if you just sort of blindly charge into every action, and also there's not rules about everything. So many things, so many decisions that you have to make, and things that you have to think about, and how you treat people. And so again, you can kind of use consequences and consequentialism to funnel that sort of way of thinking. I actually used to identify as somebody that practiced virtue ethics, which is the third one that I'm going to talk about today.
You didn't even give me that as an option.
I know. I'm sorry. I was just teasing. No. So the third type of ethics, and the first two are the main two. So you've got deontological and consequentialism. But the third one, virtue ethics, is something that I remember at school being really interested in and thinking, this kind of rings true to me. And that's essentially, it's a theory that's been, was introduced by Aristotle. And it's basically that human life is, and to live a fulfilled human life, the goal is for something called eudaimonia, which is, very important, impressive term. But what that means is flourishing. And as people, we should always be trying to develop our virtues and develop our character. And how this links in with ethics really is that if you've got the ultimate goal of becoming a virtuous person, and virtues are things like bravery, they're things like integrity, honesty, kindness. If you are always developing your virtues, when it comes to making ethical decisions, you've got to think about which virtues would these be developing if I were to take that action. And also the kind of end goal is to be in a position where you don't really need to think about it, because you are a virtuous person. So the actions you are taking are not going to be selfish. They're not going to be cruel. They're not going to be cowardly, because you have developed all of these virtues. So I always found that a really interesting way to sort of think about living your life is if I was to do this, I'm doing this because this is brave.
Yeah.
And there's something called like the golden mean with virtues, and bravery is a really good example, because you think of bravery and you think, oh yeah, that's really, really good, it's really great, braver the better. But actually, you can have bravery that is just stupid, you and you can also, so you have one end which is, really, really reckless, and you have another end that is cowardice, and in the middle you've got sort of quite this noble bravery about.
Yeah.
And so it's about finding that balance, and being honest. For example, honesty is a virtue, but nobody wants to spend any time with somebody that just tells you exactly what they're thinking and exactly what they believe at any given moment.
Yeah.
Sensitivity is also a virtue. And so it's about, I think, cultivating those virtues, trying to live like a fulfilled life, essentially. And that provides your moral code of conduct. So
it sounds a little bit like a like video game where you've got all these levels that you want your character to be, and you're constantly trying to level them out but not go too high, and then this one. Or, to hark back to a previous episode, a Tamagotchi, where you've got to keep the food level fine and the play level fine, and it's all that. That's what
exactly. You don't want to
head.
have too much food, because then they'll be greedy and overeat and indulgent, but you don't want them to be starving. So that's what you've got to do with your virtues. So you kind of identify your main virtues, and then when you're deciding on these actions, you're thinking, okay, how does this align with who I'm trying to be as a character?
Yeah. It's quite interesting as well, because that you see quite a lot of that in films, books, and TV. Like Harry Potter came to mind, for example, where they're put into different houses based on these virtues, and you can see those different types of characters. You can see the stupidly brave in Gryffindor and the noble brave in Gryffindor, for example.
So those are kind of the three main theories. And now we're going to get to the difficult bit, because now we're going to talk about some different ethical dilemmas. So, dilemma 1, Jack.
Yeah.
A close friend confides in you that they have cheated on a test and asks you not to tell anyone. Instant reaction. What are you doing here? Are you valuing honesty?
Yeah. No, I'm not.
Me
I'm
neither.
valuing friendship. Yeah. Again, be it thinking as a consequentialist, I suppose, the consequences for me personally of grassing them up, I'm perhaps going to lose that friendship. And so it's not even for the greater good of society, for my own greater good, I'm possibly thinking that it's better just to keep it a secret and stay on their side. I assume from your nodding, you're thinking the same.
Yeah, definitely. I don't find lying that bad.
Noted.
I'm partial to a few porkies every once in a while.
I mean, for someone who likes to lie, that probably should have been something that you were lying about. Like you could have kept that to yourself.
I could have pretended I was really, really truthful, never told a lie in my life. Honestly, the amount I exaggerate, I basically just talk nonsense anyway. So.
No, I always feel guilty. I was quite good at school, so if I do tell a lie, it will eat me away a little bit. I will. I feel fine about exaggerating things, but yeah. So
there has to be some base. I don't think I could just come up with. But also, it's a lie of omission. Is that right? A lie of omission, is that what it's called? Where you're not saying. It's not about
right.
It's not about actively going and telling a lie.
Yeah.
It's just about not telling the truth.
Yeah.
It's like the fine line.
Yeah.
How do you feel about something like whistleblowing, where you've got something like a company is doing something illegal, it might harm the public? Do you have a duty to report the wrongdoing, or do you think you would just think it's not me doing the wrongdoing? Or what's your kind of take on something like that?
Yeah, I think it's very, very brave, because it's a very difficult thing to do, to whistleblow, particularly in the cases you see sort of against your own government. It's you can't live a normal life after you've done it, because they will catch you, they will find out that it's you. But if you truly believe you're a whistleblower, that is the right thing to do, and it's the greater good of society. I think I'd like to think that I'd do it, but I don't think I'd be brave enough to
I
in a
think I'm too
situation like that.
selfish. You know, you watch these films and you see the like the lengths people go to expose the truth, and honestly, I am in awe.
Yeah.
But I think my instinct is protect the self, protect the family, like the unit. So basically, if there are loads of illegal activities going on at this company, guys, you can just tell me because I'm happy to lie about them.
I think I'd weigh up what it is. Like there was, I'm going to absolutely butcher this story, but there was in the Cold War a Russian nuclear submarine. I want to say pilot, but you don't pilot a submarine, do you? Driver. Let's
I
do a
don't know.
driver. A driver who was told that there were missiles coming the other way and that he had to fire them, and he sort of went against orders and said, "No, that doesn't seem quite right." That they've been sent, so I'm going to hold fire and basically save the world because there wasn't missiles coming, and so he didn't press the nuclear button. And so that sort of situation, that's very, very brave. And I
I'd love
feel
to be that
like,
guy.
oh, sorry, you clearly would have done it. You would have pressed it because
Oh
you'd gone
yeah.
along with the orders. But I feel like in that situation I would, because the consequence is so great. Whereas if it was like a minor lie, like with your friend cheating on the exam, for example, then I would never would. So there's a line with me.
There's also, yeah, there's definitely a line with like friendships. You know, I think I would also, because I would tend to value the friendship over the honesty. But so if it was cheating on a test, no, fine. Cheating on your husband, probably still fine. Cheating, but if it was doing something like taking drugs unhealthily, I mean, drugs are never healthy, but like, as in, if there was an issue that was being confided in me, but it was a problem and it was damaging to that individual, then
Yeah.
I think that's where I would be like, okay, well, I need, even if this sacrifices the friendship, the value is more on like your health, and I would kind of go like, that's where I would not protect the friendship at all costs.
What about if they murdered someone and they said,
Funnily enough, with a couple of my friends, I'm
they've
on
murdered
the
people?
yeah,
Oh no.
they've murdered people. Yeah, a few of them.
Yeah.
Emma Lyon, Charlotte Tasker. No, with a couple of my friends, I'm on the "you'll help me bury the body" list.
Yeah. Fair.
Which is terrible that like there's a few people that think me capable of that. No, I'm definitely a help bury the body situation, I think, which is not, again, like, it's not great, is it? This podcast is being released into the public domain, but I think I care for, and when I say the self, I include my own unit in that. So I don't think I'm a really selfish person, as is in Kate wants what Kate gets what Kate wants.
Yeah.
But I think the unit around, like, my friend, my family, my husband, my friends, I would do a lot to protect them, I think.
Yeah. Both of our listeners are looking at you in a new light now.
Well, both listeners, do you mean Emmeline and Charlotte Tasker?
Yeah. They're the two. Yeah. They only listen because they get name checked every other week.
Yeah. Would you bury the body?
I probably wouldn't touch the body. If they go, I've killed someone, do you know anywhere that's good to bury a body? I might offer suggestions, but I don't think I'd get involved in looking at the body or touching the body. I'd also want to know like why they murdered them. If it's like random, then I'd
I'm assuming that like these people had it coming.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I think anything would eat away. If they go, "Oh, I've stolen some sweets. Do you want one?" I go, "No, that would eat away at my conscience."
Oh,
so I don't.
Yeah, but you're a wimp. I'd be gobbling them all. I'd be like, "You give me half, or I tell." Have you ever stolen anything, Jack?
No. I probably, but not again. What I would have done is I would have weighed it up in my head, and so I'd have thought like, will they miss this, or Can I tell that story? Yeah, that's not too bad. I used to work. I used to work at like a charity shop when I was doing my Duke of Edinburgh
You
as my
stole from
volunteering.
charity, Jack. That's bad.
Yeah, it does sound bad, doesn't it? But like, I worked there for a long, long time, and then one thing came in, I was like, oh, that'd be quite good, and it was probably about like 40p, and I weighed it up in my head, and I was like, yeah, I've done 40p's worth of work here. I can just take that with me, and you can tell this is ages ago. I'm still thinking about it in my head.
Yeah, still bothers you.
Another one that I used to do. I used to work at a hospice because I wanted to be a doctor for a long, long time, and that's a different podcast for a different time as to how that didn't work.
I'm going to say, Jack, you're going to come off very, very well on this pod compared to me.
well, well. Listen to this. I worked at this hospice where I'd kind of make the dinners, and they had a 3-course meal. It was brilliant. But one of the puddings that they always used to get was Arctic roll. So what I'd do is I'd cut it very, very thinly for them, and then I'd siphon off the other 3/4 of their slice of Arctic roll and that in my head that was fine because they'd literally never eat it. So I'm not going to waste a full Arctic roll.
I once, which is sort of worse than this. When we were teachers, we used to have these tubes when you'd like raise money for Mufti Day, and there'd be like Smarties in the tube, and then you had to get like £1. And the kids were meant to all have the Smarties. I always used to like gobble down the whole of the Smartie tube, and then be like, right, can I have your £1 for Mufti?
Yeah, that's possibly. I don't know what's worse: stealing from people who are about to die, or stealing from children. Neither are ideal.
No, yeah, I know. I think I did like. I think I stole a few things in my. When I say I think, I mean I know I did. I just don't want to get into too much trouble. But yeah, the odd for me it was the thrill.
Yeah,
I was one of those. I was one of those kind of like, bored teenager, like got to get my kicks somehow. So get that lip liner up the sleeve and see if I can walk out of boots.
Yeah, no, I never did that. I mean, the thought of stealing is enough to sort of get my adrenaline going. So that I could just walk around and think, oh, imagine if I stole that. That'd be, whoa. That'd be
I remember my grandma was done for stealing. She had like a dressing gown like hooked onto the back of her, like it's just like hooked onto her top. She'd like walked out and all of the buses had gone off and all of this stuff, and this like little old dear, and they were like, oh, don't worry at all, like we're very apologetic. She told me after, she was like, oh, I've tried that trick with loads of different things, and most of the time it works. You can just sort of like feign kind of like silly little old lady.
That's brilliant.
She taught me to always, when you're doing, now you maybe don't do this, which is, sorry, this is a massive gender stereotype here, Jack. So I buy a lot of flowers for the home, and you may well do too. But my grandma used to tell me that when you're doing your weekly shop, you do all of your shopping and you're kind of checking it all out, and with like self-checkout, and you can keep hold of a bunch of flowers in your arm and forget to check them, because it is perfectly legitimate if anyone stops you. Oh my gosh, oh, I'm so sorry. Oh gosh, I don't know what I was thinking. It was just in my arm the whole time. So yeah, obviously I never tried it.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking, I don't really want some flowers, but what I could want is like a baguette. So I could have a baguette under there.
My mum would eat the baguette as she was going around the shops, give some to me and my sister, and then she would put the baguette wrapper just on the side. Like, I know. Terrible. It
definitely runs in your family.
That was yes, it is. It definitely, because it's my grandma on my mum's side. So is it any surprise that little Catherine Meeks as a nipper wants to see what she can get away with? Well, now we know I'm fine with lying and stealing. Shall we move on to another dilemma?
Yes, I don't know how this one could be worse. It's just making us.
Well, we'll do the trolley problem that you mentioned earlier, because this is a very famous one. So you've basically got an instance here, and it's all about whether action and not acting are equally as important. And so if you're actively, like we spoke about earlier, if somebody's telling you they've cheated on a test, are you lying by just not mentioning anything?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what sort of comes in with this. And it's also about weighing up outcomes versus rules. So a trolley, or I usually use the example of a train. A train is on a track, and we've got some real baddies, and they have put 5 people on this train track. They've strapped them in, and this train is cartling along, and they are going to be absolutely obliterated.
Okay.
But there is a side path, there is another track, and if you pull a lever, you can divert the train off the track of the 5 people and onto a track with 1 person. So you are actively doing something, you are making a decision. At the moment, you've had no input. You've not set up this train, you've not tied these people. You could leave it, have it run its course. The outcome obviously is then 5 people die. Or you can pull a lever and you can cause the death of 1 person.
I'm pulling the lever, I think, because I think I can dissociate the fact that I've killed that 1 person with me doing it. What I can say to myself, and I can believe this story, is that I've saved 4 people. Because presuming that they're all strangers, you know, I'm again thinking consequentially. Overall, have done good here. I'm a hero. I've saved
now, Jack,
4 people.
I'm also a lever puller, so I'm not judging here.
I knew that already. You pull it twice, so you get the train to come back.
Listen, I've set up the train
as well.
Yeah,
you're driving it. Yeah.
Do things come into play with that decision if those 5 people are 5 men in their 60s and the 1 girl is a 7-year-old sweet little wide-eyed thing on the track? Is that cool? You know, how do our own biases and our own principles about innocence and things like that, how do they impact a decision like that?
Yeah, I know what you mean, because you're having to do an action to kill the girl. That I think 60 isn't my limit of where I wouldn't play, but I can say that like if it was like 80 or 90, then I would perhaps let it kill the 5. But I think what I'd do is, in my head, I'd justify it with like maths, where I'd go, all right, they'd kind of all live perhaps 5 more years. And so that's 5 times 5, 25. This girl's going to live more than 25 years, save her. So I'd do it kind of like that, if that makes sense.
Do you think there's anything that should be held about these people's values? Like if you knew more about the people, so let's say it's 5 prisoners and 1, you know, like, and this is about how, and this is an episode, this is something for another episode, but what is the sanctity of human life, and is human life valuable regardless, or do we place, because I think as society we place higher value on certain lives. We definitely do. I mean, we you know, we see that all the time. So what is your kind of viewpoint of, are lives equal or not? How do you answer this without getting cancelled?
Yeah, that is tough one. That one, I'm going to talk very slowly and let myself think about it before I open my mouth. No, in that, well, all lives are equal in life is a life. So that's the bottom line. But then when you dive into it a bit more, if you've got someone who is older, or, you know, has got 1 year maximum left to live, and you've got this newborn baby, the life that, you know, you'd feel less worse about yourself if the older person died than the newborn baby. Yeah. I'm trying to choose my words carefully, but obviously not my grammar. But you know what I mean. So yes, a life is a life, but no, if I'm making a decision, I have to, like certainly in the trolley problem, I have to weigh them up differently.
Yeah, and you have to do it quickly. And I think this is one of the problems with consequentialism, actually, is that weighing things up is really, really challenging, because you can throw so many things. What if one of these people what if that one person who's on the single track is, a doctor who's who's working to cure cancer. I mean, I'm being very glib with, how these kind of ethical discussions can go, but then is his life more valuable because it has the potential to save lives? It can be very, very difficult. And you can see why it's sometimes just easier to be like, no, don't pull the lever, because then you're committing an act that is bad. And it's nothing to do with you, the 5 people that are dying. You haven't put this train in motion, literally.
I think if it's the thing that you can add to it is that the people's families are watching around the edge, and they know it's you who has done that action, and they'll survive and they'll live on, and so that would probably put the pressure on me to a bit where I then think, well, nothing I can do, I can't possibly pull that lever.
There's no denying it's a high pressure situation. There's infinite time as well. Part of me would pull the lever just to act, just to be like, I need to act.
Yes, yeah. You got to be seen to be doing something, so that but then I suppose what I was thinking is that the one person, their family's around, but actually you'd also have the 4 people's family around, so they could probably protect you from the revenge of the the one person. Have you ever seen, there's a board game that you can get of this called The Trolley Problem, where you can place down different people, and then you kind of so you might place it's your own father against the person who's going to cure cancer. And then you have to argue against the other person which way you should go. And then you add sort of cards to it. So it's your own father, but he's going to be the person who eradicates malaria in Africa. And so then you wear that, it kind of builds up, and you decide each way and who wins. It's quite a fun board game. I think it's called The Trolley Game, or if not, it's a play on that in some way or another.
No, that does sound good. Well, I've got lots more of these ethical dilemmas, but I'm conscious of time. So we probably need to save these for another one in our series where we can go into a bit more depth. And do you want to move on to Teach a Liar?
I do. So I've got, I always start this with, I've got some good ones, but that's just my code for, I'm just going to grab my notebook and get them in front of me so I can actually read through them. So 3 stories. One of them is a lie. 2 of them are true. So the first one is, man cracks the egg and spoon record by circumnavigating the globe. The second one is, Sweden accidentally fire a rocket into Norway. The third one is, 500 pounds of pasta was dumped in New Jersey woods. Do you want to hear them again?
Yeah.
Man cracks the egg and spoon record by circumnavigating the globe. Sweden accidentally fired a rocket into Norway. 500 pounds of pasta is dumped in New Jersey woods.
Okay, so initially I'm thinking I would know about the rocket. And then I'm thinking, yes, but maybe I wouldn't, because I'm not that on top of the news. And maybe Jack is thinking Kate's not going to know, but she's going to think she's going to know. So that one's really challenging me. The egg and spoon race, like I wouldn't know either way. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And the 500 pounds of pasta is so random that I'm just weird. Like, how have you made that up?
Well, to be fair, I think if I made any of them up, which I've made one of them up, I think that's weird. Like, none of them are normal, are they? So I wouldn't let that rule that one out.
Yeah, and they're not even linked. So how are you going from egg and spoon?
It's a horrible insight into my mind, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. It's like a pinball machine in there. I am going to go with the lie. I really hope I'm not I feel like you're playing me like a fiddle. Oh, I can just tell you're excited because you know I'm going to go for the lie as the one that...
I just think it's a tough one.
It is tough.
So random.
Okay, I'm not going to go with my instinct. Okay, the lie is... Oh, I don't know, Jack, and this is really distressing me because I'm taking.
I can tell you a bit more about each story if you
want
to know.
No, I don't. That makes it worse. Sweden, Norway. It's a lie.
That's true. Absolutely true. accidentally.
Bloody
I don't know how
hell.
they did that. I only heard about it because I looked at weird news, and it's not a mainstream thing at all. But apparently they did. They just accidentally fired a rocket at Norway, and it just landed, luckily, in the middle of nowhere, so no one was hurt.
Egg and spoon's a lie?
It is a lie. Yeah, you can't circumnavigate the Earth with an egg and spoon. It's got
I didn't really even think about that. I was just too distracted by the Sweden Norway and whether I was being played like a fiddle, which I was.
It's interesting to play the game and kind of put the lie in different positions, because I feel like if you put it first, there's so many other weird news stories that you hear after, you can't quite cling on to it. So that was my thinking there. But yes, good. I'm glad I won on that one. I have another one prepared for a later podcast that I'm actually prouder of, the lie, because it is insane. But yeah, we'll save that. You've got to listen next time. Yes. MVP. My MVP is it's coronation related, because as time of recording, we're about a week past the coronation, and one of my favourite characters of the coronation, or characters of Britain, is Prince Louis. Prince Louis makes me laugh every time I see him. He does the most normal things, but in the most funny and adorable ways. He got kind of taken away from the coronation at one point to have a bit of a break, which I think was adorable. After, on the bank holiday Monday, he went to volunteer with some scouts, and he got to drive a digger and almost tip the digger over, killing the future heir to the throne, Prince William. In the meantime, someone made him a s'more, and he took one bite of it and then pretended to faint. He's just brilliant. He's comedy gold, the kid. I wish he could become king. I don't want there to be an absolute catastrophe in the royal family, but if there was a way where he could become king without that happening, that would be brilliant.
That's a really good one. Mine's really different. So my MVP, oh gosh, I seem like such a loser now. My MVP of the week is actually Aristotle.
Oh, rubbish. No, go on.
So I actually like Aristotle. So actually, can nobody do any kind of fact checking on him? I don't want to hear about his horrible behaviour. Okay, all I know about Aristotle is what I learned about in school, and from that perspective, he was such an important figure. Aristotle really, really cultivated so many schools of thought: science, logic, ethics, politics. He was really, really influential. He went on to set up his own school, and he was the teacher of Alexander the Great. But he was so influential in these fields, actually unbelievable. When you think of figures now, and that you might be a real expert in science or in medicine or in politics, but the fact that he lay the groundwork for so many of these schools of thought, this is a long time ago, and it's just really impressive. And so many of our own kind of political structures and ethics, and the way that we study things in science, kind of using empirical observation, that was all sort of started with him. And what a great trendsetter. So
I mean, that is much more of an intelligent pick than mine. I picked
I picked yours. I prefer I prefer Prince Louis as well. So we'll agree that you win both features this week, Jack. So excellent. I hate you.
Excellent.
Brilliant. Well, as always, if you've got anything that you want to contribute to the podcast, please do get in touch. podcast@minervavirtual.com. You can find out more about everything that we do on our Instagram as well, which is Minerva Virtual. And watch us on Spotify, so you get the full extended version with mine and Jack's facial features and reactions in real time.
I didn't know that was a thing. I've not been making the correct faces for that.
Have you? What? You mean you don't watch us on Spotify? I mean on YouTube, Jack?
No, I'll have to now, and I'll look back and think, oh, I've definitely zoned out there, or I've definitely,
Yeah.
yeah.
And you pick your nose way too much, you know. It's just it's really disconcerting. It really distracts me when I'm trying to be professional over here with my thieving and my lies.
Head over to YouTube to watch me pick my nose. That's
Yeah.
perfect.
Well, we will be back next week. Next week's podcast is on, Jack, you can update me because I haven't got the schedule in front of me.
It is on science. It's
Woo!
another sciencey themed one. So yes, learning about I won't give too much away, but learning about somebody that you may not have heard of or know a lot about, and we're kind of dissecting it and
nice term.
Dissecting it and getting into the cells and atoms of it all.
Well, with that brilliant teaser, thank you very much for listening, and we will see you next week.